This is Donna Drake, but I once was Donna LaScala, and with me now is Donna LaScala. How cool is that? Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me today.
Oh my gosh, when we first talked on the phone, I was like, oh my goodness. I said, I used to have that name. So, welcome. It's a beautiful name, it means the stairs. And obviously, you've been a professional with that name for a long time, and so you've called it your name. Same thing with me, Donna Drake. I've had the name for a long time. It's like one word. But welcome. And what is equitable distribution? Because here in New York and in many different cities across the United States, probably the globe, people are getting divorced more so than ever before. Comes to the point where equitable distribution, and I would like to just like take it, divide it in half. Here's yours, here's mine, and out we go. What's going on in that realm of the world?
You know, I've been doing this for a really long time. I've been
Okay.
in finance for over 30 years, and I've been working in the divorce arena for over 20. And a lot has changed. But the one thing that always trips people up is the money, the assets, the debt. So equitable distribution is a very misunderstood term because it doesn't mean equal. It doesn't mean 50-50. And there are a lot of rumors about what happens behind those courtroom doors that really does trip people up because they think, like you said, it's 50-50. So I'm going to go in, you get half, I get half. It doesn't exist that way, and especially in a state like New York or others that are not community property states, the rules are very fluid as to what that really means when it comes to division of assets that have been accumulated during marriage. The first thing that people really need to understand is that the pattern needs to be established of what was accumulated during the marriage, what was brought into the marriage. So there's a very distinct difference between what was premarital, what you came in with, what was accumulated, earned, acquired during the marriage, and then what you're going to leave with.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to have the right financial team, not only the right legal team, but the right financial team. Because especially since people in our generation are getting divorced in droves, it's like an epidemic. It even now has its own name. It's called the gray divorce.
Okay.
There's more stuff. There's more to really discuss. And even though it's a very emotional thing, and I do love the area of behavioral finance because there's a lot that becomes attached to these things that shouldn't be. The house, the car, the 401k, the pension, all of these things become very emotional to talk about. So it trips people up and it slows the process down. So when you talk about equitable distribution, you really need to understand a lot of information before you then decide you get this, I get that.
I do know that if you came in with a large inheritance, even if you've been married for a really long time, that goes to the runner, right? That goes to the person, most often goes to the bringer. But what are some of the mistakes that people make?
Well, you know, it's interesting though, because the problem that a lot of people have with an inheritance is really keeping it separate. So let's talk about, you know, you inherit $100,000 from your grandparents and you bring it into the marriage and you have it in a separate account, but then you use it to purchase the marital residence. It's no longer a separate asset. It's now a
Blended
marital.
in.
Exactly, it's
Okay.
a marital asset. It's the commingling, and it's very dangerous. That is one of the biggest mistakes that people make, especially if you're coming in after a second marriage. You have to be very, very careful about keeping certain things separate and other things together. So going back to, you know, what is equitable distribution? Again, it's not 50-50, but it has to be established. It has to be determined who earned what, who acquired what, how things were used, how they were titled. Was it a joint account? Was it joint owners with rights or survivorship? Or was it tenants in common? Or was it the marital residence with a mortgage with two people on it? Or is only one person on the deed? It's very complicated and needs to be analyzed and unbundled before you can start to say, all right, this is 50-50, that's 60-40. And that's where the equitable gets people confused.
But it never should be 90-10. It never should be where one person just gets everything. Like, okay, we're just going to give you everything in the world, say you bye, right?
Well,
so who takes care of making sure that one person isn't unfairly treating the other person?
Well, that's really the work of the team. So not only am I a certified divorce financial analyst, but I'm also trained in mediation and trained in collaborative dispute resolution. These are two other ways of getting divorced, doing a mediated divorce or doing a collaborative divorce. And it really involves a team of professionals. It's our job to sit down with the couple and say, okay, I know you are freaked out about what's about to happen to you, and it's painful, and it's ugly, and it's not going to be pretty. It's certainly not going to be fun.
And it's also not going to be inexpensive.
Well,
all of my friends that are going through divorces right now, like I've been divorced, and it was really done very well. We had a mediator, we had 2 children, we divided things up kindly, fairly, with respect to our children and respect to generations beyond. You know, we didn't lose our heads, right? And I think because we stayed calm, we were able to navigate that in a fair, beautiful, consistent way.
Absolutely.
But now I have about 5 or 6 friends due to COVID. They're all going through different things, and it's a mess. And you know who's getting all the money? Who's getting all the money?
The lawyer.
The lawyer. The lawyer. The lawyer. The lawyer. The lawyer. Nothing against lawyers. I like lawyers, right? Okay. But the point of the matter is this. It's a game now to them. So in order to go in, you have to go in with an educated person like yourself, Donna, that can kind of be the advocate and say, okay, right? Enough is enough is enough.
Right. And, you know, I do actually use that phrase a lot when I'm talking to especially women who are going through divorce. As a woman that went through divorce and coming from a very large Italian family of women, my mother was one of 10. There were 9 girls, 1 boy. So I use the word financial advocate a lot because you need someone in your back pocket saying, you know, that's not really what you want to do. I know you want to. Like I said to a client the other day, yes, you have absolutely every right because that property is in your name. But I'm going to tell you something. If you do what you're thinking of doing, which is selling the property outright without his knowledge, you're going to open up a hole of hell in front of you, and you're going to fall into it because he's going to be really upset. There's going to be taxes that are owed. There are going to be ramifications that you can't even imagine right now. So here I am with my sword and my shield, and I'm going to protect you from you by telling you, no, this is not what you want to do.
Right.
I've seen
just
it
making
happen.
things worse and worse and worse.
Absolutely. And that's part of the problem with the legal system, because I usually say, you know, divorce law is kind of like just a suggestion. There are
that's funny. Divorce law is just a suggestion.
There are very few things that are actually cut in stone. One of them is child support. That is
25% if you have 2 children, 17% if you have 1.
Exactly.
Call it a day if you have more. I mean, you know, that's what it is.
And there are, you know, there are some ways that you can play with the number because there are caps on the amount of income that it's based on. But we all know on Long Island, there is a lifestyle that needs to continue to be supported. So there are ways of working around that. But a lot of times people say, well, he can't do this. Well, show me where it says he can't. So it becomes more of a let's have calmer heads talk about the reality. And nobody wants to face reality in divorce. Everybody wants to be really mad and say, but the judge is going to hear my story and he's going to give me everything because poor me, look at what happened. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So I am usually part of the voice of reason in the scenario saying, okay, I've been through this with my clients. I've been through it myself. I can tell you that if you do that, A, B, and C is what's going to happen. And you're not going to be happy because then after A, B, and C happens, X, Y, and Z is going to follow. And trust me, you don't want to go there. So I try to give them scenarios and say, okay, if this is what you want, and I get it, I hear you, I know that's what you really want, but let's look at the logic of it. Maybe we can do this. maybe we can do that. Let's come up with something that makes sense to you. What do you see in your future? And that's really the hardest thing, because when you're leaving a marriage, you can't see what's in front of you. And my sister always used to say to me, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I would say to her, I can't even see the tunnel, because you're in it, you're in the woods, you cannot see anything, and you can't think logically because you're thinking with your heart. And that's the hardest part. So someone like me, who has a finance background, who has experience in this, can say to you, Donna, I get it. I so hear you. I so understand. I've been there. Let's try to look at another scenario. Let's try to look at another alternative. You don't want to pay taxes. I know you want to hold on to the marital residence because it's your home, but maybe it's too expensive for you. Let's look at some other alternatives.
It's nice that you help guide them through that, because it's very traumatic. It's, and what ends up happening though is if you stretch it out too long, there's no money left, because now the attorneys have taken it all. And especially when you talk about gray divorce, you need to be able to take care of some medical bills, or keep a roof over your head, or maybe be able to buy your grandchildren a wedding gift when they get married. And if you keep bickering about silly nonsense, and you can't just come up to an agreement where like, this is what's fair, half and half, or whatever, or 55-45, if you keep messing around, there's nothing left. And that's the other reason I wanted to have you on. I haven't ever, in the 15 years I've had the show, Donna LaScala, ever have anybody talk to us about equitable distribution, or even having not just an attorney, but having someone like yourself that has a financial background to say, you know what, let's look at the pie. How can we each eat some of the pie and not go hungry?
Absolutely. And you said something that really struck a chord with me, arguing over silly things. So I tell my clients the story of Aunt Millie's teapot.
Okay, Aunt Millie's teapot, here we go.
Aunt Millie's teapot. You know that teapot that your Aunt Millie gave you on your first anniversary, and it's the god-awful ugliest thing you have ever seen, and it's chartreuse and yellow and green, and it's disgusting looking, and you hate the teapot, and you put it in the closet on the shelf in the back corner, and you never see the thing unless Aunt Millie's coming, and you put it on the kitchen table and you serve her tea.
Right.
You both hate it, but suddenly you're fighting over Aunt Millie's teapot. Why? Because you don't want the other person to have it. And this is what happens. And I say to them, everyone has an Aunt Millie's teapot. I can't tell you right now what it is, but trust me, it's there. And you're going to get to that point and say, there is no way that you are getting that precious, perfect, beautiful teapot that Aunt Millie gave us on our first anniversary. I'm keeping it. And everything just grinds to a halt. And you have to say, okay, let's talk about Aunt Millie's teapot. Let's really discuss why you want this so badly. And honestly, that's the conversation that I have with some people about the marital residence. Why do you want to hold on to this thing that may be an albatross around your neck? Do you understand that while people are married and they sell a marital residence, they get a $500,000 tax exemption on the capital gains? As soon as you become a single person living in that house by yourself, that drops down to $250,000. On Long Island, that's a huge number.
It is, you're right.
So why are you putting yourself in the path of having to someday down the road deal with a huge tax burden that you may not want? And that's the other thing about Equitable, because we're not dealing with apples and apples. Sometimes we're dealing with apples and kumquats, and you really need to understand that that kumquat is really not what you want. Because it's got a lot of things.
I don't mean to laugh, but I know that you know what you're doing, and I love that about you.
I try to talk to people in words that they can understand and make it less frightening, because it is very scary to walk down that path alone without someone telling you, please, believe me, trust me, I've got your back. And I say that to a lot of my female clients. I'm here, I've got your back. Call me before you have that conversation. Call me after you have that conversation. Allow me to come into the room and sit next to you to have that conversation. Because as soon as you have an ally, you're better prepared to deal with what's happening and to deal with the outcome.
Thank you, Donna LaScala. For more great tips like this, please go to Donna LaScala's website. Obviously, she knows what she's talking about. I was having a great laugh because, for me, I just want peace for everyone that I know. So may your journey be pleasant. Be well.